Borley Borlstein here, and I saw The Invisible Man. This movie seems to be really winning over a lot of people when it comes to the acting and the cinematography, both of which I felt were not that great in the film for some of the characters. But I'm going to get into that. Just in the beginning, let's talk about the sound and other kind of stuff that before we get into the story. The sound design is blatant. There will be moments when there is a sound that the film wants you to hear, and it will be incredibly obvious. And that's good that at least we can like pick up the sounds that we're supposed to be hearing, but they are so distinct from the rest of the noise, and in fact there's almost like no noise a lot of the times, that it feels like the film is really lacking in that department. And another main issue when talking about sound is that living in a hardwood floored house, a guy who's 6 feet tall wearing a plastic suit, you would think makes some noise when he walks around, but apparently he's also Gordon Lightfoot or something. So that's a whole other issue. But the music is actually incredible in this film, and it's unfortunate that it's trapped in a bad film because this movie kind of shit. The plot is not good, but the story is really good. And for those of you who don't know, the plot is what we see, is what most people just consider the movie, and the story are the parts in between what we see. So, for example, if a character was going to go to their job and we see them leave the house, and then in the next scene they're at their job, the plot is them in their house and then them at their job. But the story is them in their house, getting in their car, driving to the work, and then getting to work. And then we see them again. And that's the next part of the plot. So to understand that is important. So, for example, about the music being good, there is a moment in the beginning where Elizabeth Moss walks out of the house. She is starting to take back some of her agency and some of her security, and it's supposed to be this powerful and uplifting moment, and the music is swelling, and the music conveys the emotions that are supposed to be felt in the audience incredibly well. But the only problem is that the camera is about 16 feet away, and we can barely see Elizabeth Moss' face when she's walking out, and the camera just stays there. There are no cuts, and then she just slowly walks over. And I'm somebody who's really a fan of no cuts. I like films where you have a scene play out and the camera doesn't like cut to show you every little thing going on. I like when the camera just stays there. And this film does that a lot. But this film taught me or showed me something that I actually hate, which is when a camera is misplaced. And this film had some of the shittiest cinematography, except for maybe a few scenes I've ever seen in a movie, because the camera will just be placed in a location and then it just sits there. And I know why they did that. They wanted you to create this kind of anxiety to look in the empty spaces to try to find the person. But the problem is that they do this in scenes early on where it's unnecessary. Like there are unnecessarily too many uh, full body shots that are just so needless. And for example, when she walks out of the house and she's, feeling the outside air and like her face is conveying no fucking emotion. And it's really funny because like later on in the film, she's conveying so much emotion. She's almost overacting. It's actually crazy. But in the beginning, there's basically nothing. Like she just like stands outside, and it felt like the director just said, "Okay, this is your mark. You need to walk out here and hit this mark, and then walk over here, and the camera's just gonna be over there." And then it's like, "Oh, sir, should I act at all? Oh no, don't worry. The music's gonna make up for it." That's what it felt like the whole first part of the movie was about. And I almost you can't review this movie without going over the plot in order because there's just no way you can talk about it because everything leads into everything else. So I'm gonna go over the plot, and yeah, I think the movie kind of sucks. We start cold open. We're in a secluded millionaire mansion in California that is seemingly a compound. We see a man and woman in bed, and the woman is sneaking out of the bed and putting things in her purse, and she's trying to seemingly escape. And this scene, I could already tell the cinematography was going to be shit because for two reasons. In the trailer, you can see what's happening. When I saw the movie in theaters, I could not tell you what the fuck was going on. It was so goddamn dark. The movie was so fucking dark. I could not see what the fuck was going on. Maybe my theater just sucks. I don't know. Either way, the dark scenes were way too fucking dark in the beginning, but later on there are dark scenes, but they're not too dark. So I don't know. Maybe the lighting guy woke up at the end of the movie. I don't know. So the beginning, the camera is basically doing like this tracking shot where it's just moving left to right, following her throughout the house, and the film has a intentional choice of shooting her character full body rather than kind of having like maybe show us her walking throughout the house. It never really takes her perspective when I feel like the film needed to do that to kind of tie in one of the thematic issues. So in the beginning, we have Elizabeth Moss, and she's escaping her abusive husband or boyfriend's elaborate, secretive billionaire mansion. And she gets out of the building and she gets in her sister's car. And this is the part of the movie where you know it might be a little dumb. It's a Blumhouse film, so you know it's going to be for fucking morons, but you don't know how fucking dumb it's going to be. They get in the car, and Elizabeth Moss is like, "Oh, sister, we gotta go." And the sister's like, "What's going on? Why did I meet you here in the woods?" And you think, like, there's no fucking way she's actually this fucking stupid. Like, you can tell she's in a hurry. Like, any person who has any social understanding at all is like, "Oh, I can tell you're frazzled. You called me out here to give you a ride. Something's going on. I'll drive. Yeah, let's get out of here, you know?" Nah, sit there and ask a bunch of questions. So, of course, Giga Chad boyfriend, husband shows up and he starts punching the window glass. And this is where the film gets fucking stupid. The sister is like, "What's happening? My car!" And Giga Chad's like, "Open the fucking door!" Like, he's just trying to get in because he can't stand the thought of anybody leaving him or something. I don't fucking know. And then the sister is like, the window breaks, and then the sister finally decides to drive away. She's just was okay with a man beating on her car. She wasn't gonna drive away or nothing like that. But until the glass breaks, then she's like, "Oh, now I'll do something," and then she drives away. And of course, Elizabeth Moss drops her diazepam on the ground, which will become important later. So this film does reincorporation pretty decently. It didn't really have too many loose threads, but it has a lot of noggin scratchers. So now, main girl is living at a home with a black male cop and his black daughter, and the main girl's white, and then the Giga Chad guy that I mentioned earlier, he's also white. And I didn't quite understand what the relationship between all the characters were. I had a sense that maybe the cop was dating Elizabeth Moss's sister in the movie. I really don't know. I have no idea. I assumed that they were just friends because, like, I don't think any of them got too friendly with each other in an intimate sense, which is fine. It's rare to show adult characters where the film only has so few adult main characters interacting in a way that's not, you know, uh, intimate. And it would have made sense too. Like, I feel like a dumber, like, if this film was like a little bit more dumber. It would have had like, you know, the main girl and then the black guy hook up, and then that would have made the white guy jealous, the white husband boyfriend guy. And instead, that doesn't happen at all. But the film actually does something even fucking stupider. So the film spends this time, about 40 minutes, about Elizabeth Moss basically trying to recover from, her trauma and abuse. And she goes outside, the music swells. The music does a lot of the sense making in the beginning of the film, because you're going to be fucking confused because the acting is fucking horrible. And then one morning, the sister comes over and she brings the news. Oh, Adrian, your husband boyfriend, he's dead. And this is the part where, once again, the movie's fucking stupid. So she just told her sister, hey, your husband boyfriend who abused you and was like really horrible to you, he's dead. And then they're just sitting there. And then about 5 seconds later, the sister is like, what did he do to you? Like, excuse me? Are you fucking retarded? You want to dive into that trauma while she's just discovering she has this new trauma? Because that is a kind of trauma. Is like, finding out that your abuser has died is a strange feeling to experience. And if you haven't experienced it, then you can't really understand. So yeah, it was just incredibly fucking awkward. But the film treats that this is an okay behavior, and I want you all to know that it is not. Okay, it really isn't. So then what happens is Elizabeth Moss sits down at a table with her, I think his name was James, the cop, the black cop friend. That guy was fucking awesome, by the way. I gotta say that. And the daughter too. The daughter, I thought they did better jobs acting than anybody else in the cast. It was really embarrassing. Elizabeth Moss did good in some scenes, and I don't think she did bad because she was bad. I feel like in the beginning they had really poor direction. Whatever the fuck was going on, the film was shot bad, and that's what made the acting shit. But moving on, they're sitting at a table, and Elizabeth Moss is basically explaining these circumstances to her confinement in the billionaire mansion. And she doesn't really get on anything too weird, but she does say that, oh, he made me do things, he controlled my thoughts. And she talks in these really vague ways. Like, they come off as like somebody pretending that they were abused, because she's just really vague. Like, she doesn't really touch on anything specific. But there's one part that I kind of worked for me, which was that, like, oh, he wanted a kid and I was taking contraceptive, like, and they bring that back later on in the film. So they do a good job of bringing things up in the beginning and then bringing them back around later on. So I thought that was a pretty good job, actually. It's just unfortunate that, like, the acting and the writing sometimes were pretty yikes tier. Well, the writing wasn't. No, it's the camera work. The writing was okay, actually, except for the sister. The sister character was. Oh man, I think she might have just been ad-libbing her whole character, because my god, was she fucking awful, and she was so different than everybody else. So the Adrian's dead, and main girl, Elizabeth Moss, she goes to a job interview, but she forgot her whole portfolio. It's really embarrassing. And then she passes out during the interview. She has to go to the hospital, and then she gets some blood work done, and she is receiving the call of the blood work when she's back home. And they're like, yeah, you had a lot of diazepam in your system, And then she's like, oh, that's not possible. And she drops the phone a little bit to her side. She's still holding on to it. And you can hear the doctor say, oh, but there's something else I want to talk to you about, but I think you'd want to come in for that. Hello, are you there? And Elizabeth Moss doesn't hear this, but that's going to come up later. I won't spoil it now, but it'll come up later. So Elizabeth Moss is really freaked out because she hasn't taken any diazepam since she drugged her husband boyfriend. And now she finds out that she was drugged. And she also knows that Adrian's supposed to be dead. So that creates in our mind that, oh, sure as shit, the Invisible Man is real. And the film also reincorporates the diazepam bottle because she, I believe, takes a shower or she does something. And then what happens is she looks over at the counter and the bloody diazepam bottle that she dropped when she was escaping in her sister's car that only Adrian had access to is on the counter. So ding ding ding. Adrian is invisible. He's not dead and he's fucking with you. So after this, I believe we go to a will and last will and testament hearing with Adrian's brother, who's also his lawyer and controller of his estate after his death. And he's like, oh, Adrian, he wanted to take care of you. He set aside $5-10 million for you in $100,000 installments over 10 years or something like that. And it's on the contingency that she is not charged with a crime and not considered to be mentally incompetent, which which is a strange thing. Usually that's only used when somebody has to stand trial, and that's not an eternal thing. That is a short-lived thing that somebody can usually be made to be mentally competent about trial to understand what a judge is and things like that. The only time anybody's ever been mentally incompetent to stand trial forever is somebody who is like literally has no education and they just can't understand what roles in society are and things like that. Like somebody like that would be eternally uh, mentally incompetent. But I don't know what the criteria they were using for the thing. So that part seemed a little fishy. But in the trailer, they hammed that up a lot, which is not the direction the film actually went. But it's a little bit interesting of a bait and switch. The trailer is an entire bait and switch, by the way. If you see the trailer, none of the scenes in the trailer, like all the scenes in the trailer that seem interesting, none of those are in the movie, by the way. He's not in the chair. He doesn't touch the glass. So many of the scenes. She doesn't talk to the cops and tell him that he's in the room. Like none of that shit happens in the movie, which is really depressing because instead of those scenes where she seems crazy to other people, nothing is said, and it's just really boring instead. So, kind of shit. So Elizabeth Moss is a little concerned. She's having some things happen, but at the same time, Adrian's dead and she's getting this money. So what she does is she opens a bank account for Sydney, who is the daughter of the cop guy that I mentioned. I think his name is James. She opens a bank account for her, and then they're all celebrating. And so Sydney and James, they're the black guy and the black daughter. They are amazing in this film. That guy is such a good actor. He was doing fucking great. And Elizabeth Moss's character, I didn't buy that. I didn't buy her as an abused person trying to recover their life. And I don't think that it was her failing though, because there are other scenes in the film where I think she does really well. She overacts a little bit, I think, in one scene, but I think she could play that role really well. But the way they shot some of the scenes, I don't think she had an opportunity to really engage in any kind of acting potential because her character always had to kind of stand still because the film starts doing this thing. The film, after some of the weird stuff starts happening, the film starts shooting itself further away from the characters. So there'll be a scene where, Elizabeth Moss will be doing something and the camera will like back up and you'll see just this kind of dead space. And you'll be like thinking, oh, maybe there he is. You're constantly tracking for dead space to see something that will fill in the space because you see Elizabeth Moss, you see these other characters, but then there's just this extra space in the scene and you're looking for something to fill that space, but there's nothing there. So the film, in a way, kind of makes the viewer paranoid. It kind of brings the viewer in to Cecilia's world. But the only problem is the plot is fucking shit. But the story is really good because one of the themes in the movie is women's abuse being invisible, women's trauma being invisible, and people not believing them. And that's one of the themes. I mean, you have literally an abusive husband slash boyfriend. I don't know what their relationship was that is trying to forcibly impregnate her. It's a little little sexual assaulty, but we don't actually see anything to that degree. One scene gets a little close, but we don't see anything like that. But the story is really interesting because you have a woman dealing with trauma and abuse, and the same way that is true for so many women, the trauma and abuse in this film is invisible to everybody because they don't understand what it's like, and they kind of perceive her as the one who is crazy, even though she's the one who's suffered and been, I don't know, maybe gaslit or something. We don't really know what Adrian has done. And that's the part that raises suspicion on behalf of the viewer, is we don't know how much to trust Cecilia. And it seems, I mean, based on what we see in the movie, she has a lot of reason to not want to live with Adrian because he's, what we see at the beginning, he seems fucking crazy. He punches a fucking window of a car, and he, anyone who reacts that violently to their wife leaving them probably has some screws loose. So, yeah, pretty crazy. So, moving forward a little bit, the next morning, Cecilia is making breakfast. And this is, I have to give the movie props. This scene is in the trailer too, but this scene I really liked. So, Sydney is off camera, and the camera, it's the first part of it is shot like a sitcom. And if you ever see like Seinfeld, like how they build half a set and then they set the camera outside the set so you don't see that it's really like half a house. So what happens is they sit the camera down, and then Cecilia's doing something, and then James comes in and he says some stuff, blah blah blah, and then they leave, and he like enters the frame, blah 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 blah, and then leaves the frame, and it would have shot like a TV show, and then the camera moves, and we see Cecilia, and she's making breakfast, and Sydney needs something, so she walks away, and then the fire gets turned up on the little stove there, and you're just sitting there. You don't know. You hear the characters; they're off camera, but the camera's just sitting there, and you're just watching as the fires get bigger and bigger. And then Cecilia comes back, and she's like, "Oh my God, there's a fire!" And then she's about to throw water on it, and then Sydney's like, "No, no, don't use water." And then she grabs the fire extinguisher, and they put it out, and she's like, "Oh wow, like." And then they kind of have like a funny joke about it, and like the chemistry that Elizabeth Moss and James, the cop guy, and the daughter had was fucking baller. It was really good chemistry. Like the little bit interactions that they have in the movie, I thought they did a really good job selling whatever that relationship was. I thought it was really good. So we all know what's going on. Adrian is fucking with Elizabeth Moss, but we don't really know why. So the first 45 minutes of the movie, I gotta be honest, were I should have liked them, but man, they were fucking boring. But then something happens. Elizabeth Moss is getting a little bit more paranoid. She goes over to her sister's house, and her sister is like, "I'm not gonna talk to you anymore," because this is another part of the movie that's fucking stupid. But Elizabeth Moss's sister, she received an email from her computer that said like, "Oh, I felt suffocating with you, and I hate you, and I wish you died instead of Adrian." And uh, Elizabeth Moss's character Cecilia is like, "Oh, what are you talking about? I don't understand." And she's like, "The email," and it's like, "I didn't send you an email." And she's like, "Oh, yeah, right." And then she like slams the door on her, and it's just like, would you end a relationship that you have with a family member over an email that the other person doesn't even think that they sent? Like, I feel like a normal human being would be like, "What?" Like, that email was really rude. He's like, "What email?" I'd be like, "The email you sent me." It's like, "I didn't send you an email. What are you talking about? Come here, look at it." Like that's the conversation that two normal people would have. But this movie is filled with fucking idiots. So, Elizabeth Moss goes uh, back home, and I honestly forget what happens at this part of the movie. It was pretty boring. I think this is when she's talking to Sydney, and they're about to have a girls' night in because Cecilia's had a rough day. She's had a rough time recently. So she's like, "Oh, we need to have a girls' night." And then Soon as you think, oh yeah, we're gonna have a breather, uh, Sydney gets hit across the face, and Cecilia and Sydney were like standing 10 feet apart, or like at least 5 feet apart. So this part's like kind of like, huh? But Sydney wasn't really looking, so it makes sense to why she would like be confused. But this is another part of the movie where it's fucking stupid. James comes in and he's like, "What happened?" And then Sydney's like, "Cecilia hit me. Oh my god!" And now, mind you, as far as we know as the audience, that this is James and Sydney's house. And then what happens is James is like, I don't care about you, Cecilia. I gotta get my daughter out of here. So he leaves his own house with a lady who supposedly hit his daughter, and then that's it. Oh, one moment. Yeah, could you imagine that if you are taking in somebody who doesn't have housing and they hit your daughter and then you leave? Now, I know why they needed that to happen is because they needed the plot to work, but it was still fucking stupid. So, uh now we know and Cecilia knows that she's alone with Adrian because nobody else could have hit Sydney. And what happens is that they leave the house and then Cecilia's just standing there and it's just like she has no brain cells. Like she is effing stupid. Like she doesn't really do anything. She's just standing there and then she's kind of like looking like walking around and it's like you know he's in the house with you. You either need to leave or get a weapon. Like what are you doing? And uh what ends up happening, I believe this is a very long scene. I apologize. So it's a little bit hard to recollect fully. But what I remember what I remember happening is that she gets a bag of coffee and she surrounds herself with coffee and she's sitting there with a knife. You know, it's because like so then she can see him walking. And speaking of walking, I forgot an earlier scene. Earlier on, Adrian pulled the covers off Sydney and Cecilia and started taking pictures of them. That's about to come up. So Cecilia is sitting there. She has a knife. She puts the knife down and she has coffee grounds on the ground so that she can see if anybody walks in them. And she's just sitting there and there's like a doorway to her right that's just wide open that somebody could just attack her from because there's no coffee there. So yeah. And then I think in the trailer she tries to talk to Adrian, and in the movie she talks a little bit, but it's less direct. The scenes in the trailer, honestly, I think would have made the movie better. I think they're kind of cringe, but they would have made the movie a lot better actually. Because what we have instead is just nothing. They just took those scenes out. It's really fucking stupid. Because I think they would have the scenes in the trailer would have emphasized her deranged mental state, but instead in the movie she just goes from like 0 to 100 in one scene. Now, it makes sense why she goes 0 to 100, but you would have liked to seen a better gradual kind of slip into insanity. Whereas she looks more haggard, like physically, she does a good job selling it, but I don't think the story thematically did that as well as the trailer did it, which is kind of unfortunate. Like she's always seen him everywhere where he's not. You know that's in the trailer, but that's not in the movie, unfortunately. So Cecilia's sitting there by the coffee, and she gets the bright idea to call Adrian's cell phone for no reason. Just no fucking reason at all. And lo and behold, it starts ringing, and it rings above her. So she walks into the attic. She's in the attic crawling around, and she calls it again, and then it buzzes up. And she goes over there, and there's a knife in a bag. There's her blueprint portfolio that she needed for her job. There's the cell phone, and on the cell phone there are pictures that Adrian took when she was sleeping. And I think there's one other little like kind of hint that, you know, Adrian has been fucking with you. And you kind of think at this point, like, why is Adrian doing this? Like, is he permanently invisible? Like, how is he going to get her back? Like, is he just trying to isolate her from other people? Like, what is going on, you know? But you don't really know. So, this part is an actually well done scare. I actually like this part of the movie quite a bit. I think the context that it happens in is fucking stupid, and there's like a really weird beast like snarl that happens when the scare comes, but the idea of it I think is a total banger. So let me get into it. So she starts crawling back towards the uh, ladder. It's one of those attics where you got to crawl around. So she's crawling back over, and you think like, oh my god, he could be up there with her. You're getting really scared. You know, you don't know what's gonna happen. You haven't seen anything or anybody other than her, but you know he's there. So it's real frightening. Oh, delicious water. So she gets to the hole and she's looking down, and then the camera like cuts really fast, and she grabs a pail of paint, and she throws it down at him, and you hear this like weird crazy snarl, and then sure as shit the paint covers a human figure to a degree, and then he runs away, and then the ladder gets knocked down, and I thought that was fucking great because I didn't expect that. Like I just didn't know what to expect. I thought I expected the movie to be a little bit lazy, but this is essentially the reveal of the monster, and I thought it was a great fucking reveal. I thought this part was really fucking good. Unfortunately, the context for the scene is fucking stupid. You know, she just decides to randomly call Adrian's cell phone. Like, what? Really fucking weird. And then another thing too is that earlier on, she's outside breathing. This is the first time we know that somebody's there. The first solid evidence for the audience is she's outside breathing and it's cold. It's the only time that it's cold outside in the whole movie, which is later on it's outside, it's raining and they're not cold at all, but whatever. So it's cold outside and they have this horrible CGI breath effect that just looks so fucking fake and shitty. And then she's breathing. And then if you watch the trailer, they show two breaths from that has no source, but in the movie there's just one breath. And then you're like, "Oh shit, like somebody's there," you know? So, continuing on with the plot in the attic, she drops the knife to the floor. She lowers herself down from the ceiling, which is about 15 feet. It was a very high ceiling. And this whole time I'm thinking, dude, she can get attacked and killed or whatever, but nope, that doesn't happen. And she walks to the house very slowly, and she moves like somebody who wants to die. Like when you don't know where the person hunting you is, you're going to do a lot of quick movements left and right, you know, because you need to cover where you're not looking. You need to be attentive. But in this movie, she moves so fucking slow. It is incredible. It's like she wanted to fucking die. So what happens is she goes to the living room. The living room is adjacent to the kitchen, and there's an open path between them. She's standing in the living room, and we hear a splash of water, and the sink turns on. So presumably, Invisible Man was in the kitchen, right over there. She slowly walks over to the kitchen. Now, mind you, these are hardwood floors, and we didn't hear any footsteps. So she walks over to the sink and she sees there's a bunch of paint in the sink. Now, mind you, when we see how the Invisible Man is invisible later, and it's a suit, by the way, when we see the suit, you know that there's no way one splash of water would get off all the paint that got on him, because it would be, there's little divots inside the suit, and the paint would have got into that. There's no way he would have got the paint off that easily with one splash. But we didn't hear him walk away, so he has to be standing in the kitchen still. And Cecilia, she walks up to the sink and she looks in and sees the paint. And then I don't quite remember, but I think she puts the knife down a lot in this movie. So fucking stupid. But I think she puts the knife down and she slowly, like in slow motion, grabs the sink handle and pushes it down so the water stops running. And I swear, this was the slowest action I've ever seen anybody take in a fucking movie. And then she grabs the knife again, she turns around in slow fucking motion, and then she's like looking around, and then this is where the fight scene happens. And she's just basically getting like swung around and beat up, and then there's one part that kind of looks like maybe it's getting a little like a kind of sexual assault almost. It looked a little yikesy, and I thought maybe that's where the film was going to go, but the film doesn't go that way. Instead, I think she escapes the house. She runs away and she calls a lift, and I think she goes to Adrian's house. I think that's where she goes. But yeah, so she escapes, and I just got to talk about the invisible fight scenes with Elizabeth Moss. It's not that they had a guy in green screen fight her. Instead, what it looked like is that she was play fighting. She was like shadow boxing the air, and that they just put like a bungee cord on her foot and dragged her around. Like it really didn't look like she was fighting another human being, because like it just didn't look like there was another person there. And maybe that's to try to convince the audience. I don't know. The movie does deserve some slack, but there are just so many parts in the film that are fucking stupid. And now I'm going to get to one of the fucking dumbest. So I don't remember the order this happens in, but she goes to Adrian's house and she finds out that there's this invisible suit, and she takes it and she stows it away inside the house, and then she convinces her sister to meet her at a restaurant. And her sister is one of the biggest fucking cunts I've ever seen to wait staff. The wait staff comes up and was like, "Oh, hi, welcome to the place. Can I get you, started with anything, blah, blah, blah." And she's like, "No, we'll need some time." And he's like, "Oh, would you like anything to drink?" And then he's like listing off some stuff, and she's like, "We'll just take the free water." Like she's just really had a horrible bitchy attitude. And then the guy's like, "Oh, have you ordered here before?" And she's like, "I assume you just order food and then you bring it to us." Like she just was a fucking horrible bitch. And the waiter's like, "Oh, haha, we do things a little differently here, so it's all family style." The sister character was a fucking horrible bitch. And I think this was done on purpose, because guess what happens? Yep. Cecilia is about to tell her sister what she found in Adrian's apartment, and then a knife starts floating between them. And I thought this scene was pretty cool, in that like these two characters are having this moment. Sydney or Cecilia and her sister, I don't remember her name, they're about to reconnect, and you were going to kind of make some positive progress in the main character's journey. And that gets pulled out from under us because you see the knife floating. You're like, "Oh, fuck. Like, he's here." And he slashes her sister's throat. And that part I thought was cool. Not that somebody gets killed, but for the aforementioned reasons. But then something fucking stupid happens. And then what happens is the knife, like, we can assume that Adrian like grabbed Cecilia's hand and like put her fingers to close around the knife. So then she's just sitting there with the knife in her hand, like she's shocked that her sister is dying. And then she's holding the knife for like, honestly, I think 30 seconds. Cause like some lady next to her sees her, and then the audience, the people in the restaurant are all slowly reacting like, "Oh my God, I can't believe what's happening. Holy shit." And she has the knife there the whole time. And so what happens is that she's like freaking the fuck out. She's like, "Oh my God, he did it, the Invisible Man," or something. I don't think anybody says the Invisible Man in the movie. But Cecilia gets put into a psych ward place. I kind of like, I mean, she's going to be charged with a crime, blah, blah, blah. And there's been some other conversations with the brother lawyer character that I didn't mention, but this is the one where it gets interesting. So what happens is that Cecilia is in Crazy Town. She meets with the cops, and one of the guys, the James, he's a cop, but that really scene had just nothing going on at all. It was fucking boring. The trailer scene was a lot better. So what happens is the brother lawyer shows up, and he's, saying the money that you were receiving was contingent upon not being charged with a crime, and unfortunately you're charged with a crime now, so I'm gonna have to take away the money. And then Elizabeth Moss character Cecilia, she's like, you know, you're just like your brother. You're like a jellyfish. And then he's like, huh? Like, what is this? What are you saying? She's like, you're just like him, but you don't have a spine. And so, like, she's mad that he's doing his legal job. Huh? Like, I thought that was fucking cringe. And then Elizabeth Moss sees some gum, so she grabs the gum. So for most part of the movie, she's been fucking stupid, but she grabs the gum, and she goes, back to her cell, and she's sitting there, and she gets up at night, and she goes over to the shower, and she apparently had hid some kind of very elaborate pen on the top of her shower with the gum, and she turns the water on, and she holds her wrist up, and she's like, I'm not gonna let you have this baby or whatever, and she stabs herself, and Adrian is in the cell with her, uh, I believe. I think it's Adrian. This is the part. There's a twist at one point, so you don't really know who is the invisible person until later on. But she tries to kill herself, and Adrian stops her, and then she's like, "Oh, haha!" Like she was pretending to kill herself so that Adrian would reveal himself, and then she like kind of beats him up, and then a guard comes by, and he's like, "You gotta be in bed. Get the fuck in bed." And then she's like, "Oh no, help! He's in here." And then the guard comes in, and Adrian's suit's kind of like malfunctioning or whatever, and you can kind of see it. And the guard's like, "What the fuck?" And the guard just gets fucking smoked. And then what proceeds to happen is probably one of the coolest action scenes I've seen in a movie. It's just unfortunate that it's in this stupid movie. So basically, what happens is Elizabeth Moss is in the hallway, and just a series of guards are coming and checking out what's going on. And the invisible suit man is just laying waste to all of them and killing them. But you can kind of see the invisible suit. So it's like a horror movie. And this part, I thought they did a really good job to show that he was fighting them and he wasn't like just invisible. Whereas earlier, when Elizabeth Moss was fighting him, it looked like she was just fighting with air. It was really stupid. So uh, Elizabeth Moss grabs a gun and then is chasing the malfunctioning invisible suit man out of the psych place, and then they just walk out the front door. Apparently, it's that easy to leave psychiatric jail. It's just you just walk out the front door. I mean, there were some guards, but I mean, they just walk out the front door. So pretty great. And then they're in the parking lot, and Elizabeth Moss is looking for the invisible suit man, and she is behind a car, and she is facing to the left of the car. And then she takes about 3 minutes to turn all the way around to face the right of the car. And you're looking all over for the invisible man, and you don't really see him anywhere. And I thought the film did a good job of kind of baiting the audience a lot of the time into thinking like, oh, maybe there he is, or maybe there he is. Like the film, oh, man, like I said, it's a good story, terrible fucking plot. So, oh, what even happens after that? I don't even know. This is insane. This fucking movie, man. I guess I'm just gonna skip ahead because the movie's kind of dumb. But basically, what happens is that they go back home to James' house, and they're attacked by one of the invisible suits, and James almost dies. And the him getting beaten, I thought he died. Like, if you ever seen a Live Leaks video of somebody die, James looked he did one of the best dying performances I've seen in a movie in probably forever. It was incredible. That guy who played James, the black cop, that guy was fucking amazing. Holy shit. So they kill Elizabeth Moss, shoots the invisible suit, and she aims the gun kind of down and almost hits Sydney, but whatever. And guess what? It's a plot twist. The person in the suit wasn't Adrian. It was the brother lawyer. Really, really making you think, huh? So we know Adrian's alive. So Sydney goes, or Cecilia goes to Adrian's place in a nice dress, and then they're having dinner, and you don't really see Adrian do anything to indicate that he's like too bad. He does put his hand on Cecilia's thigh in a weirdly weird way. And basically Cecilia's like, I need you, I need this relationship to start with the truth. I don't want there to be lies between us if we're going to have this child together. Because Adrian changed out her contraceptive so that now she got pregnant. That was before the beginning of the movie. And Adrian's like, I didn't do anything. That was all him. He was manipulating me, And so what happens is Cecilia is mic'd up and she's trying to basically get this, confession, but Adrian won't confess. So Cecilia walks off to the bathroom, and what happens is we see Adrian get killed by somebody in an invisible suit, and then Cecilia comes out. She's like, "Oh my God, he committed suicide! Oh my God, call 911!" She calls 911, and blah blah blah. And then James hears this, and he's like, "Oh my God, I got to get in there." So James runs in, and he sees Cecilia, who's practically stoic, and she's walking out of the house, and she has a duffel bag, and then she's like, "Oh, you heard him, James. He committed suicide, right?" And then James is like, he looks in the duffel bag, and he sees the invisible suit, and then you know what's going on. Cecilia used the suit that she hid earlier in the movie to kill Adrian. So at least there would have to be two suits, but potentially there were three suits. And I could explain why that is, but I don't give a fuck. This movie's fucking stupid. There's a lot of plot holes. There's a lot of stupid shit that just fucking dumb. But James is like, yeah, he committed suicide. And then what happens is Cecilia basically walks up to the gate, walks up to the camera, and then she kind of just stands there. And I don't really think she did that good of a job of emoting in this scene, but the music is this swelling moment, and it's supposed to be like uplifting and freeing, and the music is incredible. The music is, this really kind of almost classical, emotive feeling kind of music. And then in the other scenes with the fighting, it's like fart dubstep, loud crotch robot noises. So it's very distinctly used. But yeah, I don't know. I think the movie's pretty fucking bad. I think you could only like the movie if you're kind of stupid. I thought the cinematography was fucking dreadful. And yeah, there's just lots of little holes all over the place in terms of logic. And I mean, I think the film had a really potential good story to talk about female abuse, but they just did not really shoot it in that way. They shot it in a film of more paranoia, but they didn't include the moments of paranoia from the trailer that I think would have worked really well. So yeah, this is probably my longest review ever, but yeah, fuck it, fuck the movie. And if you like the movie, hey, whatever, I don't know. Argue in the comments, I guess. Have fun.